Oh, the mistake, and McBreen's clean through on goal here to win it. What a miss from Daniel McBreen.
Fucking dog shit.
G'day everyone, A-League fans, and welcome to the latest episode of A-League Off Air. Now, as with all things A-League related, despite my best intentions, this day, this week, has just gotten away from me and all turned to shit. So, I hope you appreciate the fact that there'll be no intro today, just a couple of quotes. The first one from Dave Graney and the Coral Snakes from their long-lost album of the early 90s, I Was the Hunter, I Was the Prey. Dave Graney sang, I'm just having one of those lives. Well, I am just having one of those lives at the moment. The A-League is definitely having one of those lives. And the second quote, because I was thinking, we've been a bit negative, me in particular, over the last few weeks in these intros about how, peak A-League and all that sort of shit. And probably, we should celebrate the way Stadge did, came out and celebrated all the good things in the league. So every 4 or 5 years or so, I get out my classics of Russian literature. And I reread recently The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky, in which Prince Mishkin says famously, beauty will save the world. And I thought, you know what? Let's be a little bit positive. Beauty will save the world. Have you ever seen a better fucking header than Ben Mazzeo leaping away from goal with his ear into the top corner? Hiro Ibusuki, elegance personified, and fucking Rico Danzaki just doing full manga electricity explosion like out of some 80s cartoon. That was unreal. Adrian Segacic, obviously, with his, all his organised celebrations and everything, a young hat-trick scorer. And Jalen Pearman, who the fuck would have thought that? The real beauty, though, of that Perth-Auckland game was that our producer at Network 10 and Paramount Plus, Robbie Feldman, who is a commentator as well, he has been a long-time Wellington Phoenix fan, but he's from Auckland. And when Auckland arrived, he just turned his coat. Off went the Wellington shirt, threw it away. On came the Auckland shirt. He runs the Auckland Fan Podcast, or he's on the Auckland Fan Podcast all the time. And he's Auckland through and through. And here they were playing Perth, and he was commentating. And so what more beauty could happen than Perth getting the upset win? So hats off to you, Robbie Feldman. Welcome to true A-League supporterdom. And that'll just about do it. Welcome, all you diehard, hapless A-League fans. It's a beautiful Monday morning. Macca.
It is a beautiful morning, and for someone who hasn't done any intro and done fuck all week, that was a good intro again, Robbie. Well done. It's good to show you.
That was very dramatic intro.
It's always fucking dramatic. Mystery guest.
Will say that I did send Robbie Feldman a message right on full time and wrote, that must have fucking hurt, because he had to call his team losing in Perth. And he said, yes, I had to put the professional face on, as we know that sometimes you have to do. And I thought there was I found a little bit of joy in that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't, because I'd already passed out. Although, hang on. Now, we followed your day, Macca, on Twitter. No exaggeration? No little, you cracked on? Because I spoke to you at the start of the day, and you'd just done a 16K run.
I did.
And
I
you
started
said,
the day.
Now's the time to let go, let loose.
I went out for a 16K trail run, did a bit of running around the beach and the bush, and then I got about 12Ks in, and I went, I fancy a beer today. And I got home and I had 2 6-packs in the fridge downstairs. I brought them upstairs and thought, I'll just see how I go with them. And by the time we finished the Perth game, the 12th beer had just been finished. And then I realised Liverpool were playing as well. And then I looked in the freezer and there was some Grey Goose. So I had a couple of Grey Goose and while I watched Liverpool.
So you did.
So when we go back over these games, particularly on Saturday, if I sort of get a bit sketchy, fuck, I had a look at the highlights this morning. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what happened now.
Yeah, well, that's where we're all probably a little bit there. None more so than our special guest today because Macca has done very well to keep digging deep into his contact list and get these guests coming, because we know you prefer a guest than just me and Macca shooting the shit. I'm very pleased to say we have a special guest. You will remember him mostly from finishing his career with Macarthur FC, young A-League fans. But of course, he did play 28 times for Australia, got a couple of goals, started out with Brisbane Roar before the Netherlands came calling, played in England and Greece, had a spell at the Mariners as well. Tommy Oar, welcome to A-League Off Air Farken.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
You almost had as many clubs as me there as we were going through this.
No, it's not too bad, considering, he played a long time as a pro, looked after himself better than you did.
Everyone makes this mistake, but I actually played in Cyprus, not Greece.
Cyprus, Apoel, yes, exactly, that's true. Yeah, no, I do know that as well. I should have, This is, let's just jump in, because this is something that gets me about lots of people saying, why don't the A-League just sign Mario Balotelli or whatever, get out here, it'd be unreal to come and live in Australia. First of all, there's the money question, okay? Footballers don't play for nothing, especially your ones that are used to earning big money. They enjoy still earning big money. Yeah, but why, they've earned enough money. Why don't they just come here for the lifestyle? Because there's fucking Cyprus just next door. Fucking hell, are you serious?
The problem with Cyprus,
if you want paradise...
Tommy, you might be able to clear this up. The problem with places like Cyprus, though, is that they tend to sometimes just go, "Nah, we're not going to pay you."
Don't get paid anyway.
Yeah, what's written on paper could be anything. It's true.
It's the paper can just go wandering.
Now, Tommy, A-League fans, well, the young ones, well, everyone knows who you are. In fact, I won't patronise them or you. You're back doing media work with the A-League at the moment on your weekly show. How are you enjoying it, and how are you juggling that with becoming a dad? Because I, for one, and I can say this because my kids are more or less grown up, but I wouldn't wish parenthood on anyone. I'm sure Macca can concur. And you're just starting your journey, mate. So I wish you the heartfelt best of luck.
Oh, thank you. No, it's been good. It's been only a month, so it's still pretty fresh. But I actually reckon the last month I've watched more football than I have in years, because I'm just kind of stuck on the couch, at home, not doing much.
Yeah, so that's true.
It's been good. It's been good. It's watched a lot of football and watched a lot of cricket over the last month. So. No complaint from me.
The start's easy, mate. The start's easy. And you're saying that you're stuck at home. When I tried to call you and message you to come on this, you were like, "Oh, sorry, I was out all day."
Yeah.
Life hasn't changed much for you yet, has it?
Well, I'm here.
Well, we could
got here.
Yeah, we could spend a little time talking about the cricket, but we won't, obviously. Although I will admit that having been overseas for many years and having grown up. Did we talk about this last week or the week before?
No.
A bit of cricket? No. I grew up in the border years, of Kim Hughes, John Dyson, Graham Wood. I can name the entire fucking team of probably an Ashes tour from 1982. And they were the great years, Lily Marsh, all of that, or Tomo with his slingshot fast bowling, etc., etc. And then I fell out of love with cricket. I think a lot, when you find football, it just blows all other sports out of the window when you're a young kid growing up in Australia. It blew everything out of the window for me. But then I just came back to it this summer, thanks to the Greek kid from Sydney with his reverse sweep, whatever, return shots or whatever you call them. And it was good fun. And it reminded me of, we don't, as Australians, we grow up and cricket really is a summer cultural thing. And, in stinking hot days, watching hours of Test cricket, it's good fun. Did you enjoy it, Macca?
I did, actually. I've probably watched more cricket this summer than I have done in the last 10 years.
Same.
Ashes are still big in my family because my mum's English and she still goes for England. So I support Australia and we can have a bit of banter about it. Then I pull the passport out, the British passport, if England start to win and she gets the shits because she calls me. My grandma I used to wind my grandma up with that as well. But no, I don't mind. I don't mind. It because it was an exciting series too. It was good. There was a bit of niggle between the teams. That always gets you a bit involved, isn't it? When they seem to really have a dislike for each other, and the crowds start to get at each other as well. It's like, yeah, right.
We don't want to see that sort of thing on TV, though, Macca. I mean, someone rubbed shoulders with someone else. I mean, that's just not
you
right.
Were going to come back
Seriously,
to that one.
no, that is too much. How can you intimidate a young man like that on a sporting field? I find that I was horrified. And I thought, you grub, go Australia.
Fucking grubs.
Yeah, I used to love cricket growing up, and when I went to the Netherlands, I kind of lost track a bit. But I did go to one international game because the Dutch play cricket. They actually
true.
Yeah. And I remember the main fast bowler for the Dutch team also played on the wing for their rugby union team. And it was just
in the ruck for their AFL team.
It blew my mind, that stat. So, and I think he was like pretty British as well. So I think he just had a Dutch passport. He was a British guy that liked rugby and cricket and just found a way to get into both those teams. So it was great.
That'll be right. Half of them come out and go play for South Africa as well these days, or wherever they can. Yeah. Hopeless fuckers. Exactly. Anyway, let's not go there. Let's talk A-League football, because it started with a bang. Macca, there was a great mention on Twitter that perhaps it's no coincidence that you and I commentating our first match in more than a blue moon ended up being the match of the season with Melbourne Victory versus Western United. I have to admit, when you were shitting out the stats 3 minutes into the game, it was very hard not to drop into A-League off-air mode.
I have to admit, my head was spinning because we were just having a stat off in the first couple of minutes of the game, and I just kept coming with stats. I was like, what the fuck has Robbie done to me here? Let's get that out the way and concentrate on the football again. But what a game!
Exactly.
What a fucking game!
But, it was an outstanding game. So absolutely. Let's go through very quickly because there's loads to talk about in this one. We won't spend maybe as much time talking about a couple of the other games, but this one, Hamill opened the scoring with a great goal in the 9th minute. Ibasuki equalised for Neroli, got his second of the season. Then Wallity equalised. Then Santos gave Victory the lead again. Then Botic equalised in the 91st minute before Hero stepped up, as I said in the intro, after the assist from Danzaki in the 94th minute. Before we talk about what it all means, there was a disallowed goal for Reno Piscopo as well, which could have changed things a little bit. Certainly there was mention made of that. It was Jason Guerria's last game. Arthur Dillis is still without a win. Melbourne Victory can't finish their dinner. Tommy, what did you make of this one?
Yeah, I thought both teams were actually pretty good value, I thought. I think Victory were pretty unlucky in some respects. I thought a lot of it. But at the same time, every time Western United kind of attacked, they looked likely. And I think the counter-attacking from both teams, especially if you look at Fornaroli's goal and Ibasuki's goal, all the goals were just fantastic counter-attacking kind of moves. And I think ultimately Western United was probably more clinical, and that's what got them the result.
That's the problem with Victory, though, isn't it? They're not clinical. And we've said this now I would say we've probably gone back 3 years. We've said this about Victory, where they control games, they have the players, they look dangerous, but their XG and what they finally get with their goals is the biggest disparity in the league. And they've done it again. They create so many opportunities going forward, or they get into so many dangerous positions, and they just don't finish it off. For me, the Piscopo goal was a clear foul, the one that was disallowed. It's a pull on a shirt, and it's only a small pull, but when you're going at pace like that, a small little pull is enough to stop your momentum, and it was a clear foul, and I think the referees got that.
What does Tommy think about that? Because there were a few people on Twitter saying, what the fuck is McBreen talking about? Never a foul. Now, I assume they were Melbourne Victory fans as well.
Now, as a neutral, I agree with Macca. I think that's a foul. People will probably say he exaggerated the contact or whatever, but exactly like Macca said, when you're at that speed and those, any kind of slight foul can put you off, and that's a foul all day. Yeah. It might not be a popular opinion.
No, not against victory supporters, but fuck it. It's a foul, so shut the fuck up.
It's true. And with VAR, that's just the way it is these days.
Yeah.
Any sort of foul like that, especially where goals are involved, because if you're on the other team and you see that, what are you going to make of it?
Yeah.
I agree entirely.
I think this game just exposed even more that Victory have a bit of a soft underbelly. You know? They've got a really good team, but they have this little soft underbelly. And you see little moments in games, and I will say the number one culprit for it is Daniel Arzani. He seems to, when he doesn't get the ball or the ball doesn't come to him, he has no qualms in having a go at his teammates. But sometimes, even when I think that they've probably taken the right decision and, he might have been an option, but you see him quite often arguing with his teammates and they all fire back. But then, then you saw Bruno Fornarola go off his fucking tree when he should have squared it to him, when he thought he should have squared it to him at the back post. And there's just these little niggly things you see, and you see that with other teams, but they just, I don't know what it is, but you seem to see that a little bit more with Victory, or I don't know if it just stands out for me more because
I think they've got more big personalities, because I completely agree with you, and I think big personalities typically seem to play more for themselves than for the team. And that's a big accusation. I'm not saying that they're doing that, but even just 1%, if you've got multiple players doing that, makes a big difference. And I completely agree, because if you look at them now and you're going to take Jason Guerrier out of that team, I actually think they've got a pretty big problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm with you, Macca. I think that...
Where is the problem defensively, you mean, or in terms of egos and personalities? Because Jason Guerrier is a humble but strong personality in that changing room, I reckon, as well. Like, he comes across as just a fucking top bloke.
I think he's probably
in the way he plays and the way he is.
Biggest leader in that dressing room. He'd be one of, because a lot of the players have a lot of experience and they're potentially bigger names, but they're more the goal scorers, the creators, and they're more selfish. Whereas he would be he'd be one of the players kind of establishing the culture in the dressing room. Yeah. No, I think you take him out. Obviously, Mitch Langerat's still to come in. I think he can probably fill that void somewhat. But in terms of outfield players, I think Guerrier leaves a huge hole in football terms and off the pitch as well. So
I tell you what,
I don't know if a 16-year-old goalkeeper is going to really take a leading position in that.
He? Fuck me, what products does he use?
He looks younger than you, Tommy.
He's they're going to year 6 together.
Yeah.
But, by the way, Jack Duncan, he's been outstanding, and what's Arthur Dillis going to do? Is he going to bring Langerak straight in? Obviously, we all know how good Mitch is and what he's done and everything, but it's going to be really fucking harsh on Jack Duncan if he comes straight in and starts, because he's been one of the best keepers, I think, in the league this year, and he pulled off 3 or 4 really good saves in that game on Friday night. And when the producer was asking for the 3-2-1s, I just threw in there that surely Jack Duncan's got to be in there. This was about the 85th minute. Yeah. And then right at the last minute, Archie was like, fuck, we have to start swapping it all up. But he made some really good saves. And I'm going to feel really sorry for him.
Was it that reflex save down to his right in the first half?
Yeah. That was Ibasuki header really as well. Brilliant. That was point blank.
Onto the crossbar.
Yeah. He's been in really good form, and I'll feel for him. But if we're going to flip the switch and talk about Western United, these kids don't give up, do they? They just keep going.
Hang on. Before Macca, before we flick that switch, because I think we do have to talk about how good Western United are. But let's close the chapter on Melbourne Victory.
Finish them!
Exactly. Let's finish the Victory chat, because they're out of the 6. They're out of the 6 now. Now, at the start of the season, and maybe, 4 weeks ago, we were thinking, geez, after that 2-0 win over Perth, perhaps it was only Perth now when we look back, but they play with swagger. They're good going forward. PK was we like to run a tight ship. There's no Bruno. He's not taking any shit. All of a sudden, and I'm not saying Arthur is taking shit, but he doesn't have a win yet, and we're seeing this recurrent theme of not being able, like you say, a little bit of a soft underbelly in this team. Is Arthur Dillis the man to take it forward? Because shout out to For Fuck's Sake, the Victory fan podcast, who have been around for a long time. have their entry points within the club. They confirmed what I'd heard, which is that Dillis is the man going forward, that there will be no search for another coach, at least for the time being. I heard that there were even some overseas options of people willing to come back that have already coached in the A-League that were willing and keen on the role. That hasn't happened because they're showing faith in Arthur Dillis for the moment. But Macca, is he the man? Is he the man to do it? Because they haven't announced it yet because they're waiting probably for a win, for something positive to announce it on. And 5 without a win now, this is worrying.
Well, I think, they're waiting to announce that he'll be there for the rest of the year. And I've even heard a rumour that it might be next year as well, but I don't know how true that is.
I think so.
And they're waiting for a win. Well, that might not come because the next 2 games, what are the next 2 games? Adelaide and Sydney, is it?
Yeah. Adelaide and Sydney, yeah. Adelaide away.
And Sydney, then that'd be 7 games. If they don't get a win out of those 2 games, 7 games without a win, Melbourne Victory just doesn't stand for that. And I'll be honest, do I see Arthur being the man? No, because when I think of Melbourne Victory, straight away I think of a big name coach. Simple. Someone who's got runs on the board, who's experienced, who's got, commands respect straight away. And and this is no disrespect to Arthur, but he hasn't got any of that yet. He's been around as an assistant. He stepped up, and this is the other thing too. Unless you're a real strong character with a certain personality, when you come from assistant to first team coach to head coach, players need to look at you differently straight away. And if what your relationship, and Tommy will probably back me up here, is if you've got an assistant coach who's a bit like your chummy friend, and I know Arthur's like they all say he's a really nice guy, and he's sort of like the chummy guy that just goes along with it. To flip that switch to then all of a sudden be I'm the head coach. But going back to what Tommy's also said about these players with egos, and I just can't see him being the right guy for the job. I think they need to find a big character with experience, with an aura that really, when you think of Victory, you think of that person goes with it. You just go, yep, that's a fit.
With that in mind, Macca, are you a little bit surprised that they maybe didn't go after Mark Milligan? Obviously, we've seen him go overseas, but I thought obviously inexperienced, but he's one person who I just think, embodies Melbourne Victory, and he obviously has the history there. But I was surprised if you're going to go for an inexperienced coach, they didn't maybe go in that direction.
I think they took, from rumours I heard, is that they asked the question and Millsy was like, well, not ready, which I think that's really smart from Millsy. If that's true, if that's the rumours that are true, then I think that's smart, because I think we all expect Millsy to be the Melbourne Victory coach one day. Yeah. He has very lofty ambitions in his coaching career, and I think he's if that's what's happened, I think that's extremely smart from him, because he needs to go and do his apprenticeship. He's been under Carl at Adelaide now for a little bit. Now he's going to Malaysia, which will give him a different perspective under Pete Klomoski, who's now got plenty of experience coaching in Japan, where he can learn and grow more as a coach. And I think probably after that, you might see that, a couple of years down the line that he'll go, right, now I'm ready to take the reins. I'm experienced enough. I know I've made mistakes. I've seen my own coaches make mistakes and I've learned from them, rather than jump in now and maybe go, oh, fuck, I've only been coaching 18 months.
Yeah.
This is a bit too early.
Makes sense. One to keep an eye on over the next couple of weeks. Final point. Jason Geria has gone and joined Albirex Niigata in Japan. From what we've heard, for very little money in terms of a transfer. From what I've heard, 0. So, which is
that is very little.
Not good for a club, not good for a big club that have just announced massive losses as well, that have somehow managed to negotiate a free transfer for their outstanding Socceroo's central defender. So, perhaps a couple of questions need to be asked there as well if you're fans of Melbourne Victory. Let's flick that switch, because the fans of Western United must be living their best life at the moment. Macca, I cut you off, so let's go back. How good is what they're achieving at the moment?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Johnny Aloisi, over the course of his career, he started off, it was a horrendous start. when he was back at Hart in the day, and then he was at Brisbane, and his squad his recruitment, I would say, probably didn't suit. And I was a bit like, But as he's grown, especially at Western United now, he had that quality team that went all the way and won it, and then he had a dip again after that. But this year, I think you're really starting to see a more mature coach who's very level-headed, very thinks about what he says and what he does, and you can see all that experience, what we just talked about with Millsy, coming to the fore, because the squad he put together is one of the youngest. Yes, he's done very well to go and get. You've got your Angus Thurgood, who's still only 24, but we all see him as a senior player because he's been around for so long, and he is fucking everywhere on the pitch, everywhere, all over the place. Ibasuki has been fantastic. I put my hand up at the start of the year. I said I think Western United will come last. I don't see enough quality there. Ibasuki's not going to suit the style of play they want. Well, fuck, I'll eat my own words because they're doing fantastically. He's got Imai at the back. You've got Garucci. Like this experienced spine with young players like Leonard and Wallity and Botic, a young striker coming through. It's fucking good. And they had a short turnaround against Victory. Everything said that they should have run out of juice and Victory should have fucking seen them off in the back end of that game. But it was the opposite. They just keep fucking going and going and going. And they're a joy to watch. They're very hard to beat. And I actually quite like the way they play. I liked watching them play. And I never thought I'd say that about Western United after the last couple of years, but they're decent.
To your point, I think if you're objective and you look at their team on paper and you look at their position on the ladder and their results recently, like you have to say John Aloisi is doing a fantastic job because on paper, in terms of going into the season, obviously some players have broken through, the likes of Leonard at the back. But I think if you look on paper, I think they're probably, they're not a finals team on paper. So for him to be getting these results speaks volumes about how good of a job John Aloisi is doing. And I completely agree. I think that, he's matured a lot as a coach. And I think if you rewind a month, do you remember there was the game, I think it was a 3-1 loss to Melbourne Victory. And he did that press conference after the game where he just lost it at his players. That seems to be a bit of the turning point for them. I don't know if that was a wake-up call for a lot of the younger players, but since that moment, they've kind of gone on a run and have been almost a pretty different team, actually.
I think, Robbie, I just want to go off the back of that. And that's another thing I think too, is that you hear players say that Johnny never, or very, very rarely goes off. But when he does go off, you fucking listen. Yeah. And I think that's another a good learning curve over years is that if you go off all the time, players end up just going, oh, fuck, he's going off again. But if you're composed and you keep it level-headed most of the time, and then all of a sudden the spike goes up and you fucking kick him up the arse, everyone goes, whoa, fuck, yep, okay, need to pull it back into gear.
Yeah, there was that 2-0 defeat. Well, I agree with what you're saying, Tommy, on paper, and I guess, Macca, you were doing your season predictions off what we'd seen on paper as well. And after that 2-0 loss to Melbourne City just 4 days ago, where they offered very little. I mean, they looked as though City just, controlled the game from the start. They pressed them. They didn't give them. And I thought maybe that's the ceiling for this side. But then, well, we just saw that they just burst through that ceiling in the last minutes against Victory. Is it because Victory aren't quite good? One little comment on what you guys are saying about, for example, someone like Dylan Leonard, is that he's probably only there because James Donachie injured himself after the first game of the season as well. So, to be able to adapt and show your faith in kids and not panic and just say, after that first appearance, these kids that have been waiting their time and seizing that opportunity, that's also because we see in other clubs, we saw at Perth at the start of the season when Zdrilla chucked in a bunch of kids, sink or swim. It was sink in that first game, and we didn't see it. Some of those kids for another 6 weeks, 2 months. We've seen at Brisbane, kids in and out. We've seen at Newcastle, little moments, but it's not easy. We've seen Sydney bring through some kids that look like, but they're not grabbing the headlines the way these kids at Western United are, and that's got to be. We're doffing our hat a lot to JA at the moment on this podcast, but I think it's justified.
Yeah, if you look as well, if you rewind when Western United were having their difficult period, in November, early December, Leonard had a red card. I remember John Aloisi's press conferences, he wasn't throwing the players under the bus. He was pretty supportive, and as soon as they were available again, he kind of gave them a lot of belief.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big difference because I think a lot of other coaches, as soon as a young player makes a mistake, it's kind of you can say, oh, we lost the game because of an individual mistake, and it kind of, that player will just lose their confidence. Whereas I think JA's done a really good job with those young players at keeping it positive, basically.
Yeah.
Which is something that not many managers do. So.
Yeah, I was just about to say that because keep that throwing up kids under the bus quote in your head. Johnny is one, and I will go to Aurelio Vidmar is probably the standout in the league of coaches that they don't ever, or very, very, very rarely do they say bring up the young players having to play. It's always posed to them, but Aurelio Vidmar will just go, well, they have to. That's simple. Like, he doesn't say, I know, we've got, he goes, well, they have to play. That's fine. He doesn't dwell on it. He moves off. Where if you've got another couple of coaches in the league, or quite a few actually, that will say, well, our bench was pretty inexperienced and we didn't have and this young player had to start. But Johnny and Aurelio are the two for me that stand out that just go, yeah, they play. Okay. They're in our squad and that's it. And they don't.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah. Let's just get on with it. And he backed Leonard when he got the youngest goal scorer, youngest red card, and youngest own goal for the club. And he just went, it happens. We just told him to keep going. And it's paying dividends, I think.
All right. If you haven't heard it yet, go and check out Hiro Ibasuki's post-match interview. Because if ever you weren't quite sure, is he really the real deal? He is a fucking legend.
Yeah.
Make no bones about it. Post-match interview. And maybe he was inspired by Imai's F-bomb in Wellington a few weeks ago. But those Japanese boys on the post-match interviews at Western United, I can't wait for Riku Danzaki, given his, electricity eyeballs fucking goal celebration. That's going to be one brilliant post-match interview as well. That's the end of that one. Let's move on. Let's head across the Dutch to Wellington, who went down 2-1 to Adelaide. Did Adelaide have the bye last week? What did they do? I feel like we haven't spoken about Adelaide. I was thinking, everyone's saying, are Adelaide under the radar? No, they're not under the radar. And then I'm thinking, well, we haven't spoken about Adelaide for a while. And then
January was their last game. They scored the last. What was that?
Maybe it's just too many matches going on at the moment. Everything's a fucking
midweek game.
Muddle.
It's been chaos.
Oh. Yeah, exactly. It has been absolutely chaos. I'm on a call tomorrow night again at fucking 10 o'clock at night in Sydney, Perth against Western Sydney. That'll be fun. I am looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. Wellington lost 2-1 to Adelaide, who are not flying under the radar, even though they had an own goal and then another bad mistake from Oluwayemi, who popped the ball up to Luka Jovanovic. Corbin Piper, Macca, who we spoke about last week or the week before, and you said, yeah. That was he's got something. Now, he's not a young player. He's 22. He's obviously been kicking around. Just shows you you were 23 when you signed pro.
Yeah.
There's just a moment where if things come together and you seize that opportunity. Now, this was on a losing side, his first goal, but I like him. I think he's got real character. He's wearing like number 3 on his back or something for left back or centre back. He's played up front. He's played in the centre of defence. He's played in midfield. He's played wide. He scores headers. A word on him, and then were Adelaide lucky, Macca?
Well, obviously Oluwayemi fucking had the Vaseline on the gloves and threw one to Jovanovic.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, they were lucky in that respect.
No pressure. There was no pressure. He just fell on Wooten.
Yeah,
it was
got in each other's way, didn't
crazy.
They? Let's be honest. And you were like, well, fuck. But I'll go. I know I always go back to this, and Phoenix fans are probably fucking sick to death of hearing me say it. But when you don't go down the other end as much as the opposition, and you don't create as many opportunities as the opposition, small details become bigger details. So when you make a mistake, if you're only getting a couple of shots on goal a game and you're only usually scoring one, well, then when a goal is scored or a chance is given down the other end, it becomes a bigger moment because you're not going to create as many chances down the other end. Last season, Wellington Phoenix had Costa Barbarouses running, burning the house down. But they also had David Ball out there. He had Oscar Zavada around. They had Ben Old. They had Ben Wayne.
Yeah.
They had all these different options going forward. And now everything seems to be it's Costa or bust. And I think a lot of teams are now starting to say, well, with that factor and with the factor that Phoenix seem to want to play out short pass all the way through at all costs until they can get to a certain place and then play that ball, teams are just going, well, fuck, we'll press the fuck out of them. And if there's a quick bloke who can read the game that's around Costa or a big guy as well who's going to win anything in the air, he's almost nullified. And Costa's good enough, don't get me wrong, he's still good enough to create a few opportunities or get into positions to cause problems. But he's fucking hell, he's carrying the workload going forward, isn't he?
Yeah.
Big time. Big time. And I think as well, like if you think of Wellington Phoenix and why they were successful last season and even earlier this season, they were so tough to break down. Like they didn't concede many chances, but even in the first half against Adelaide, like some of the playing out from the back was just suicide.
Yeah.
Like there was a few chances they coughed up where Adelaide didn't even score, where like, you know, massive.
Yeah, the Hughes ball for.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There was a Hughes square ball that was picked off, yeah.
And I think that's a team that's, you know, probably starting to lose a lot of their confidence, I think. And, you know, if you're not having the attacking threat like Macca was saying, then, you know, as a defenders, that, you know, if your defenders are having a lot of the time on the ball when you're in possession, they're not the ball players. You want the front third players who are the ball players, who are the technical players in the team to be having the majority of your ball. But that's not how it happens with them. It feels like if they don't counterattack, like Macca said, and Costa doesn't, you know, dribble past a couple of players, or Ishiga, who's been inconsistent but has shown moments this season. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, I can't think of a single time where Wellington's kind of had sustained possession in the front third. It's just like, I don't know. It's just like I don't really understand their identity with the ball. Defensively, I think they largely look pretty compact, and obviously we've seen individual errors. But with the ball, I don't really understand what their approach is, and I think that they're getting found out because of that.
Yeah, and there's also the absence of Alex Rufer, which doesn't help at the moment. And the back, that's 2 games in a row where he's been missing as well. Not much to add to this one, I don't think. We move on to another game where...
They're just rolling on, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Now, Adelaide did move provisionally top of the table with this one, with that win as well. So they've still just the 1 defeat, I think, so far this season for them. So Carl Viet obviously has just lost Mark Milligan, his assistant coach. We saw Travis Dodd travelling away. So I guess he's stepped up into that second assistant role. We've seen basically it's one thing Carl's doing really well, which is this rolling assistant coach. You know, he's got Galekovic, who's always been there, but we saw Damien Murray was there over the last couple of seasons, in and out. It's good. He's doing it. He's like an A-League Ange.
Yeah.
With the F-bombs.
I love an F-bomb, doesn't he?
on the
Cage
sideline.
Tiger. Yes.
the nuclear reactor meltdown that is Carl Viet on the sideline. All right, let's head along to, well done, Adelaide. Congratulations, 3 points. Melbourne City versus Brisbane. Look, we've spoken a lot about Brisbane on this podcast. Tommy, I know you're a Brisbane boy. I'm going to give you a free hit to chat about this, but we don't want to hear Macca. I think we want to move on. I don't even think there's that much to say about this game. It was hot. It was difficult conditions in Melbourne. It was 30-plus degrees. We had drinks breaks again. I thought, and these are my thoughts, I called the game, I thought Brisbane were competitive. I think we saw really players say, as much as anything, you know, Macca spoke last week about what's the plan? What's the plan off the pitch? What's the plan on the pitch? I felt again that we didn't see a cohesive tactical Brisbane, but what we did see was a Jay O'Shea, a Florent Berenguer saying, look, it's not working for us, but we're just going to have to run twice as hard, get on the ball as much as possible, scrap for everything. And it almost paid off, but in the end, like I said in the intro, unbelievable goal from Ben Mazzeo. That was spectacular to settle this one midway through the first half of second half rather, of what was otherwise not a great game that didn't hit the heights. Tommy.
Yeah, I think the one thing that kind of sums up the game for me was Brisbane Roar had more possession than Melbourne City, and they created 0 chances, big chances.
Yeah.
And if you look at their players, they've got the likes of Halloran, Berengay, O'Shea. There's enough quality in that team to be making chances. And that in itself,
there was someone missing, wasn't there, as well?
Yeah,
I should say.
Exactly. And, losing Waddingham, what it looks like, who's been their most likely kind of avenue to goal this season. Are they going to replace him? I mean, although they, like you touched on, they showed a lot of fight and, they were resilient defensively. It just looked like a team that was a bit in disarray and, players. If I'm an attacking player and I get put in that team, it's not a fun team to play in. You're not getting the ball in a position where you can take the defender on and create a chance. Halloran was basically playing as a fullback, because they're pinned back. So it's very negative. I think it's everything around the club on and off the field is very negative. Players.
Well, how do you see that, Tommy, at the moment as a former Brisbane Roar player, and someone who lives up there, who's identified with Brisbane Roar as well? How do you see what's happening with the club at the moment, and where do you point the finger?
Well, I think when Zach Anderson and Kaz Patafta took over, they obviously brought a bit of a wave of optimism, and everyone was hoping things were going to be different. And I actually feel for them because I feel like they've done, with what they could, a relatively good job at trying to get a bit of enthusiasm and refreshing around the club. But if you just rewind and look back over the last 6-7 years, or basically since Ange was there and since they left and since he left, I mean, the club, they've had a couple of seasons where it's, they might have scraped into the finals, but even then it's been pretty dire. And it's, the club, in terms of all the off-field politics and, not paying their bills. If Brisbane locals are kind of just disillusioned with the brand Brisbane Roar, and the on-field and off-field dramas now are not doing anything to, bring back those fans or bring back any optimism or positivity in the community for the club. So it's a very frustrating time to be a Brisbane Roar fan, and I think that it's almost getting to the point where it's the club almost needs to completely revamp, needs probably new ownership. I mean, you can criticize the owners a lot; they obviously cop a lot of criticism. They have dug deep into their wallets over the last 5-10 years, but at the same time, I mean, if you're not going to invest in the club, in the squad, and not have any kind of direction you're going to head in, then it's going to continue to lose money. So I don't really understand what their end goal is. The academy is kind of being gutted. Young players are leaving, going to other clubs. I think the club is, from top to bottom, basically, there's not many good points to point out. And I think the only positive is that the only way is up. That's basically the only positive I can pull from it. So,
Macca, anything to add?
Well, I'm just going to go back
said
to
your piece?
The throwing people under the bus quote that I said to remind of. And this came after the Newcastle game. And Ruben went in his post-match game, look, I'm not going to throw any of these kids under the bus. And then his very next line was, Brissett played 30 games in the NPL last year, didn't score a goal. And I was like, well, hang on. You're not going to throw the kids under the bus, but then you've just said that he can't score a goal in the NPL. So what is that then?
Well, this is a very different approach, isn't it? But what we can see, and everything we've heard as well, because, and I'm sure, Tommy, you've heard all the noise, the rumblings coming out of that playing squad as well, is that it's not a happy place to be at the moment on that training pitch. For one reason or another.
And I think, it's not often in world football you see a team go on a run like this and the manager keep their job. So the club hasn't really
So the club did come out about 2 weeks ago and say Ruben is here to stay. That the rebuild, and Ruben came out and said, I am, famously, I am the man. I'm here. I'm the one that's doing this rebuild. Now, my intel is that the Kazakhs had gone to the board and basically said, we have to think seriously about changing coach. It's become difficult. The run is untenable, and this doesn't even have to be anything personal against Ruben or otherwise. This is the worst run, the worst start in the history of the A-League. Something needs an electric shock to change, and the owners of the club said, since you guys have been in there, you've been through 4 coaches. There's no money to pay out a coach. at the moment, so you're stuck with him. So Kazakhs came back to the playing squad and said, we've decided that Ruben's here to stay. That was the official word out of the club. The decision is and it's true, the decision from the club is that Ruben is here to stay. But I think 2 weeks ago, it was a very fine line to whether Ruben was staying, and that the decision was more or less made to look seriously about bringing in another option. And the owners of the club just said, don't even think about it. There's no money.
It's getting to the point where, if Ruben if they were to move him on, like there's probably a youth team coach or coaches in the ranks where you could just promote them. It's not like they need to go out and hire some big name coach. So I don't even necessarily think it would be a financial decision necessarily, but at the same time, something needs to change. And in the 2 weeks since that unfolded that you just touched on, they've probably only become worse. So it's not like if they were putting in really good performances and just not being able to score and creating chances, you would understand. You'd be like, okay, like they've just been unlucky, not had the rub of the green, things have not gone their way. But I just feel like they are, and as the table demonstrates, the worst team in the league, basically. And by some distance, I think.
My opinion, if Ruben does get the sack, then they have to go Queensland coaches next. The club isn't going to dish out a big amount of money to get a big name coach. We've already heard that time and time again now from them. If this is the state of the club, why not go and say, right, here's a head coach, an assistant coach, and a youth team coach who are all Queenslanders, who all not. And I don't want to say, don't get me wrong on saying this, that the coaching staff don't care, which is not what I'm saying. But when you have someone from your region, everyone knows that you care deeply. You are really entrenched. It's your community. You will know everything about the youth system out there. You'll know everything about the people in that community. You might know where to be able to grab another sponsor from because you're embedded in that community. And because you are Queensland coaches who maybe ex-players of the club who are embedded in that community, more people might be willing to throw in sponsorship that helps you get a little bit better here and there. And I think, honestly, that's what it needs to be a Queensland coaching team next, whether that's – and I don't know if are there –
Give us a name, Macca. We want a name. Otherwise,
heaps.
I'm going to throw it out there.
There's heaps. Matt Smith. There's Carl
if
Dodds
you
in the
look
youth
Warren
position.
Moon when he was there a few years ago, they need someone from that mould, I think.
Yeah. There's plenty of coaches out there that are Queensland coaches who have backed up with the club or been with the club before as players that care about the community, and they could work as a Queensland coaching group for Queensland. The fact that the club is in this position, okay, we can talk forever about this, but the fact the club, if this position that has all of Queensland to pull from for its players and the top third of northern New South Wales, because they're closer to them than we are down in Newcastle and Sydney, is a fucking disgrace.
Yeah.
Simple. The fact that they fucked off their academy is a disgrace. Simple.
Yeah.
Like, we all know that. But as Simon Hill pointed out, if the Backeries did say fuck it and left, who's going to take the club over? So get Queensland people in there who care about Queensland, who care about Queensland kids, and fucking do it that way. And I'm sure you'll start to see the love, because even if the team was at the bottom of the league and with locals in there working to change it, the community would still have a soft spot for them because they're locals doing it for locals.
Yeah. Well, and we'll get there, but look at a local kid in Perth, what he did on the weekend as well. So there perhaps is a little blueprint. We will get to that, but before then, we have to talk about the Adrian Segacic show. Before that, perhaps, I will excuse myself once again because, as I said in the intro, I'm just having one of those lives at the moment. There is no Who the Fuck Am I this week, our local quiz, but I will tell you who last week's answer was. I can even try and go back and find the clue.
I can do a quick Who the Fuck Am I, if you want.
Yeah? Go on.
Who the fuck am I? My national team squad number was 121.
I knew that's how you were going to go.
You knew it, didn't you? Sure,
I did actually think about doing that same Who the Fuck Am I very quickly as well, and then going, Tommy, any ideas who that might be?
It was, and apparently it was 121 because he couldn't have 11, and he wanted 11 times 11 because he's an arrogant fuckwit.
Or a nerd. I mean, what the fuck is that?
That's what some fuckers got too much time on their hands, haven't they?
Exactly. Since when does anyone know their times tables once you pass 100? The 11s, once you go on past 99, are impossible.
Macca, what number were you there? 126 or something?
127.
Seven.
Apparently, I might be.
He showed us the shirt on the podcast the other day.
Yeah, it might be a world record as the highest ever international number on a team.
Okay, so who the fuck am I? Last week's was I scored. I think I scored on debut. No, I scored in my second ever game in Australia, having played, won the Bundesliga, having played in the Netherlands and France. I didn't say that he'd played in France. That might have given it away. I scored in my second ever game, which was a cup game, and then I scored 8 minutes into my A-League career and never scored again. That was the big clue. And I am Matthew Delpierre.
I actually played with him in Netherlands.
So yeah, okay. For just that one season, yeah?
Yeah.
He went on
and funnily enough, it was he was the one so I obviously played with two other Aussies over in the Netherlands, and he came up to us three and was saying he wants to play in Australia. So then we just rang everyone we know and said, you should look at this guy, and then he went. So that was good.
Really? So he's the one that initiated the move?
Yeah. He was always fascinated by Australia and wanted to come. And I think, funnily enough, he was actually very, very close to signing for Newcastle Jets.
Really?
And then I don't know what happened. It fell through, and then he ended up at Victory, and then the rest is history.
Mm.
So
yeah, wow.
Unlucky for Newcastle Jets.
Yeah. What could have been,
yeah.
eh?
And a very good player as well. He was. All right. I think someone did get that right as well. So well done. Oh yeah, they got it right because they had him in a multi. Or something, or backed him as first goal scorer on, and so that's why they remembered. Okay, Sydney FC versus the Central Coast Mariners. Tommy, 4-1 victory for Sydney. It was quite even, but I think we'll talk about what's going on with the Mariners as well before Segicic got that hat trick. I think it was 22 minutes hat trick off the bench. Not a bad little effort from him. But what did you make of the game overall?
Yeah, I think Sydney was probably the better of the two teams in terms of they had more control. But I think it's been a bit of a theme for Sydney lately. They haven't created the opportunities they want to with the quality they have in the front third. I think they're probably on paper with Victory the strongest team in the front third, and they're just not creating as many clear-cut chances. And as we saw against Adelaide a few weeks ago and Newcastle, where they had to score some late goals to, get a result, it's been the young players off the bench that have actually made the difference and given them the spark. And ultimately, that's kind of what happened again in this game. But I do think, going into this season, I thought Sydney FC was going to be the team to beat, and they've shown glimpses of that. But in that game, I still think there was still a few question marks around, for whatever reason, that the players, if you take Joe Lolly out, I think he was fantastic. He's been unbelievable recently. But aside from him, I think a lot of their front thirds have been pretty nullified from defensively. And I think that's a little bit of a cause for concern. And, it might be time to put in a few of those young players, from the start even.
Getting on to Joe Lolly, what about the ball for the first goal to Joel King? It was all that Joel King will get the assist and Klimala gets the goal, but it was all about Joe Lolly's ball into that back post area. It was fucking phenomenal. Just watched the highlights back again this morning, as I said, and my son was with me, and he just went, "Oh, what a pass!" And I was like, "Yeah, that was the goal. That made the goal." I will say with the Mariners, we know that they're low on stocks going forward. We've talked about it ad nauseum, but I will talk about it at the back. Brian Kaltak, and we heard Harp say it in the call, and I've been thinking this for a few weeks too, that I reckon you could go back 18 months or more and look at a pass out from the back for Brian Kaltak and look to see where he's misplaced one, and I reckon you could probably count him on one hand in almost 18 months. And then the last 3 or 4 weeks, he seems to be just, I don't know whether it's confidence or trying too hard because to make a killer pass too more, but he's giving more and more passes away than we've ever seen him do. Trent Sainsbury, I think, is still finding his feet after not playing for a long time, and he's made a couple of errors as well. He's given away free kicks. He's had a poor touch in this game in Sydney that sort of put them under the cosh where they conceded a goal. And
that's the moment, Macca,
Yes.
isn't it? I mean, Sainsbury's return doesn't look good for Caltac at the moment. There was that game where they played with 3 at the back when Sainsbury made his first start, and there it was Caltac didn't look, and I think I was on that call with Harps, and Harps said it then as like, what's happened to Caltac? And that was in that game, and since then he doesn't look the same player. And sometimes it's chemistry, but do you think there's a problem there?
If there's a problem.
Even one of the goals, I think Sainsbury made the error and then Caltac doubled down. They both made an error in the space of 5 seconds.
Yes.
And
So
for both centre halves to do that,
Correct.
obviously conceding the goal, like that's you can't be making mistakes like that
No.
if you want to get good results.
And that's
basically.
the other thing that my son commented on. He went, oh, that's a mistake by Sainz. And then he said, why is Caltac trying to just shield the ball there? Just play it back.
Yeah.
Like
Too casual.
Yeah,
I think.
it was like, oh, I'm just going to bully you out the way. And it was like, I'm in trouble. And it was like, they've doubled down. We're under pressure. Oh, fuck, we'll just double down on it here. And they just looked out of sorts. And I don't know, Brian's been playing for 2 years now with this young guy next to him, and he's been the senior guy and he's been the captain and all that kind of stuff. And you wonder, I don't know, having a senior guy next to him now, is he sort of that role? Oh, well, I'm not the senior guy anymore, and it's sort of changed the way he plays a little bit. I don't know. Is it a pressure of they're not free-flowing going forward like they have been, so he's trying to overplay things and start that off? I don't know, but they just seem to be out of sorts at the back as well. And Segicic, this was the time in my my Twitter tirade on Sunday when I was going, this is the time when I went, surely there's a plethora of young players going to get sold overseas because, we've also heard the rumours that, Maxi Burgess has been squeezed out because they've said, we've got our foreigners. Then the next one is all the young guys we're going to sell overseas for money. So Maxi's going to be leaving apparently in when the window opens. And this is the reason for players like Segicic and Kaczarski who are going to come on, score goals like that and go, yep, we'll sell you off overseas. We make the money and we roll the next one in, because he could have had 5. He was electric. Created, obviously scoring a hat-trick young off the bench is fucking ridiculous. But that last goal, it actually showed all his qualities. He's run into the box with the finish for the first one, the fighting quality on the second one, and then to turn muscle Will Wilson out on the edge of the box, use his body, turn, and then just fucking bang one top corner. I was like, you've got a fair bit in your locker.
And before he even scored his first goal, he actually
missed that,
fluffed a chance.
Yeah,
and I
he
think
had it.
bounce back from that and show the character to just move on. I think that's pretty mature for a young player as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he did revisit the sleeping, put the game to bed goal celebration after the third, which shows a certain amount of ego in there as well, because this backfired on me last time. Yeah. And I'm going to double down.
We've asked them for celebrations, Robbie. There's lots of shirts coming off celebrations at the moment, isn't there? Geordie Lawton seems to have allowed everyone to take their shirt off because Johnny said you can. Yeah. And now they're all taking their shirt off. I'm like, hang on. Yellow cards, I'll be starting as a coach. It's $100 fine. $100 fine for a yellow card shirt off. Get that kitty up for the end of your trip. Well, that's just because
the clubs are desperate for money. Yeah, exactly. They'll take it. Not sure what they could do with $100, but fair play, Adrian Segicic. He had that season in the Netherlands as well, where he also found the back of the net, played with Dordrecht, played more than Garang. Garang was there at the same club, wasn't he? For a spell. All right, Sydney bouncing back. Good performance. Mariners still in trouble. Mark Jackson had another go at the quality of his squad and the fact that they're just not performing. He did say, and this again, we go back to the importance of visa players. He said, look, my visa spots are all full. There's Edmondson, McCalmont, Feijão, Docker and Caltac. 3 of them have been very good. 2, Feijão and perhaps Edmondson, even though maybe that's a bit harsh on Edmondson, who did score, player of the match in the grand final. and played his part in that cup run last year, but is not the player they need in front of goal. And basically Mark Jackson-Macca has said we have to go Aussie if we want some reinforcements up front. Can you see that coming? Because we still have no time frame on DiPizio when he's coming back, and it's, a dangerous job to put eggs in that basket when you've got a young player coming back from a serious knee injury and saying, is he the quick fix?
Burgess and Wood from Sydney.
Yeah.
There's plenty of talk.
Well, they've been linked to Perth as well, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. But my mail is that Burgess would like to stay around.
You said this about a month ago.
Yeah, he wants to stay around the Sydney area for some personal reasons. Be a perfect fit. Could drive to training every day up the roads to the Mariners, but an hour on the freeway. Wood is getting the smallest amounts of minutes here and there. I just think,
Wood does press a la Zdrilic. Zdrilic loves that ability to defend from the front, that Wood does offer him at Perth.
Well, speaking of Perth, we saw...
Let's go.
I saw that's obviously the next game where they got a win, and I saw that Stan was quoted as saying there'll be five signings in the window at least, and next year we'll win the fucker. Someone was filming him in his car, and I was like, you fucking beauty. I love it.
What a legend. Seriously.
Back on the Mariners, if you think about, some of the young players we're talking about at Sydney FC, Kachalski, Quintal, they're not getting the minutes they probably are good enough to be getting. Like, if you're the Mariners, are you asking the question for a loan for 6 months?
Why not?
These are the kind of questions. I'm not sure Sydney FC would be that willing to let them go, but it could be a win-win situation, you know what I mean? Because Sydney FC's got so many. Same with Melbourne Victory. They've got so many young attacking talents.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You could do worse than us.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
All right, let's head to Perth. I mean, the clubs have to be smart at the moment. We know the clubs don't have the money to go out and bring in whoever they want, except apparently for Perth, who all of a sudden are winning football matches, knocking off top of the table Auckland, courtesy of Jalen Pearman. That was some goal. I've already mentioned the hapless Robbie Feldman was on commentary. That was awesome, along with Grace Gill. Auckland, Tommy, they should still have won this. I mean, they had in the second half, 4 or 5 clear chances that on another day would have gone in. Yes, Sale made a couple of good saves, who's back in the team, playing well, but you can't take anything away from Perth. And the fact that Jalen Pearman scored such a cracker, it's his second ever game in the A-League. They've had big raps on him for a while. Labib, local, young kid coming through the ranks, was excellent as well. Are they getting it right where perhaps others are not?
Yeah, I think
it's hard to say they're getting it right.
I think Perth, they finally had a little bit of the rub of the green too, because if you think about their game against Western United, I thought, their performance was pretty similar. They played quite well and were obviously unlucky, or not unlucky, but lost it in dramatic fashion at the end. Nothing's really gone David Zrilic's way this season, so obviously I think he was due a bit of luck, and they I thought they were quite good. I think Carluccio in the first half was good. Obviously he had that disallowed goal as well, played a role in the goal that was scored. So I think, they're showing a lot more resilience than they were at the start of the season. To turn things around from what was a catastrophic start from them this season. I think they're much better now. They're much more competitive, and when you defend desperately and you have the likes of Taggart and these individual players going forward who are capable of moments of brilliance, you're always a chance in games, and that's kind of how it's transpired in that game, I think. And, from an Auckland perspective, I was talking about this earlier in the season. They obviously, they weren't going behind in games. And I thought that if they did go behind in a game, I always thought, what are they going to do? Because they always defended quite deep and looked to counterattack. If you go behind, you can't do that. You have to go and get the ball. And I think that some of their results in recent weeks, they have gone behind for some of the first times this season, and they've gone on to lose those games. So I think that's a bit of a problem for Auckland, is when they need to be more, press more aggressively from the front and be more proactive with their football. I think that's when they don't look as strong as they do. Because, if they go up 1-0, they're so hard to break down. They're a tough team to beat. But I think that's kind of, if I'm an opposition coach wanting to play against Auckland, I'm thinking if we can get the first goal here, we're a big chance.
Well, Macca, that raises an interesting point about what Steve Corica has said from the start of the season, which is I'm battening down the hatches. I'm building this side with defence as the foundation. We know the old saying, defence wins championships, attacks win matches. Steve has been unashamed, I think, in setting out his camp and building this defensive side. With that in mind then, and what Tommy's saying, does he just cop this odd game on the chin in this situation where, we do concede that goal in the first half? We're not built for dominating matches and chasing games. We're going to need a slice of luck. We didn't get it. That, like we said, they still could have scored. But you know what I mean? Like, is Steve saying, this is our first season. We've done pretty fucking well so far. We're sitting top of the table. We need to add this to our game eventually moving forward, but we can cop this type of thing every now and again? Or is that just, am I romanticising it? Yeah.
So you said, if you're tight, if you're hard to beat, then they're not. Let's put it this way: they're not like a Knicks where they're just sitting back in their own penalty spot with everyone on the edge of the D. They've got a lot more structure and depth to their defensive play than that. I just think that, and I've said it a million times, and I went on to the Robbie Feldman's Auckland podcast last week, and I said to him, there's nothing not to like about Auckland, except I think the one thing they have got wrong is that they don't have that 15 to 20 goal striker. And they'll have to share the goals. And when you're riding high and you're winning every game, it sort of becomes easy and becomes a habit, and you just get along. And then now it's that, okay, well, let's see how it goes. How do you react to losing a couple of games? They're not sitting top of the table now. They're actually they might have a game in hand, but they're not on the top of the league at the moment. So it's like, all right, the pressure starts to come in, and that's when you start to see their resolve as a squad and how they can adjust to that. But when you go to Perth, talking about how you adjust and how things go, they actually look like a team now, rather than a Sunday pub team that used to turn up and go, right, where are you playing, Jimmy? You play on the left, do you? Yeah, okay, well, you play on the left today. I'll play in the middle. Like, that's what they looked at the start, because they were all over the place. Now they look like they're starting to get a little bit of cohesion. They're starting to get a little bit of understanding. The fight and desire were there. Some of the last-ditch challenges when the chances were there. Rizzo were flying in when Ollie had knocked the ball down, flying in to block a shot that I reckon a few weeks ago the defender wouldn't have even been switched on enough to it would have just been knocked in. Ollie Sale had a fantastic game. He made some great saves. And last week and this week I actually thought Perth, look, they're an outfit now. You can start to see the makings of something. There's still a long way to go, don't get me wrong, but you can start to see the makings of, all right, they're starting to work together. They're starting to be a unit. They're starting to, jump in for things to help each other. And with 5 signings apparently coming in the next week or so,
there's the 2 experienced Japanese defenders, players, aren't there, who are both 30 plus.
Yeah.
But we know that, as a rule, not to stereotype, but Japanese players look after themselves, are pretty fit. We've got a few veterans in the league already. And interesting that Australian clubs are looking to Japan a lot at the moment. We've got Auckland, we've got Wellington, we've got Western United now. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you though? For a long time, and I know there's the argument of we want young Australian kids coming through. Of course we do, but you could go to Japan and get a young Japanese player on loan from one of these top clubs who could be one of the stars in your team week in, week out, who's under 23 international or whatever, and he's going to be one of the better players in your team. And get him on loan, whatever. I'm surprised that we haven't had more Japanese players, if I'm being honest, in our competition over the 20-year period, because they are a powerhouse of Asia, and there are the depth that they have in their quality right across the board. I find it incredulous that there hasn't been more young Japanese players on loan, and we've seen what they're doing. They do well when they come. They're technically strong. They fit into the culture because they're so respectful. That their team ethos and they work for the team. Why wouldn't we?
Yeah,
I think not only Japan. I think A-League teams are waking up to Asia more broadly, particularly Southeast Asia. I think there's so many potential bargains and great kind of deals to be done there, and I think that will only grow as the A-League kind of matures. Because it's still such an untapped market, and we've seen, in recent times, even overseas in the big leagues, in the Premier League, these types of leagues, like more and more of these players getting noticed. And I think that the A-League needs to look in that direction more because I think as well, you don't always want a proven player in their 30s to come out here. You want an unproven player with everything to prove. And it's almost creates a different kind of culture in the team when you get those players. And I think that's the direction the team should be going for sure.
A more
I think
cost-effective way.
Yeah, well, we've seen it with the teams playing in Asia now that we've returned to a more normal, not hub-based Asian football the last couple of seasons, whether it be the Mariners or Sydney FC. Every team they come up against has a couple of, Japanese or Korean players playing it, in Malaysia, in Thailand, in Indonesia, where they're already in that market because their depth in their leagues is great. And whereas traditionally, because of our, dominant footballing culture, we've always looked to Europe or South America to bring in these players, maybe it is time. And maybe we are as well starting to look. It's also no coincidence that it coincides with the fact that Korea and Japan have been on the world stage, for 40 years, particularly Korea, where it, the 82, 86 World Cups and have been ever present ever since. Japan have had their moments as well, but they are starting to really perform on the international level as well. I have a stat to chat from Andy Howe about this game. Now, Robbie Feldman mentioned it in the intro, but Perth delivers in the new biggest distance derby, and I have just confirmed all the actual stats. Perth Glory's upset win over first-placed Auckland FC. Its first visit to Perth should not have come as a surprise. In 8 previous trips to Perth by Auckland-based National League sides since 1999-2000 NSL season, the Glory has won every single game with a combined goal difference of 26-3. Now, I think, was there, maybe the rumour is that in our Channel 10 Paramount Plus tipping competition that one person did tip the upset. We're waiting to see. Find out who that was. It wasn't me. It was normally my kind of... No.
You always pick the most random ones. That's why you're down the bottom.
Exactly. But it's against my ethos to actually be a successful tipper. So even when it was something that I would normally do, I didn't tip it because I thought it would happen.
You're such a counterculture bloke, aren't you? Eh?
Exactly. The previous Auckland-based teams were the Football Kings from 99 to 2004 and the New Zealand Knights from 2005 to 2007. Technically, Perth Glory versus Auckland FC is now the longest ever distance between Australian National League sides, measured from home venue to home venue, because Mount Smart Stadium is about 100 kilometres further than the Cape Town for Wellington, and also a little bit further than North Harbour Stadium, which is the other ground in Auckland. So they couldn't have gone much further east. The whole total of the trip, 5,345 kilometres for Auckland to get there. No wonder they were fucked.
Fucked. It was so long to get there, but they were also kicking off in their time about fucking 4 a.m.
Yeah, it's true.
Exactly. It's well, fair play, home side. Sorry, we've got to push. It's very hot today. We've got to push kickoff back. Yeah. No, all those little things come into play. Okay, last game of the weekend. Don't forget to follow Andy Howe on Twitter and X and on his websites and in his buyer's books of Fair Play Publishing, as well, who look after Australian football a lot as well, do a great job. Go and find his work there. Last game of the weekend, Newcastle 1, MacArthur 3. Macca, you were calling this one. Ben Gibson gave the Jets the lead before, and this was unlucky not to make it into the intro for Things of Absolute Beauty. Valère Germain's goal from 30 centimetres out. He looked embarrassed. He tried not to. He waited as long. He let it run across his body. He didn't. He didn't lunge at it. He just thought, "Fuck, guys, someone is going to come." They all just stood and watched. It was a thing of beauty. Jed Drew then scored before Bernardo got the third. Nice moment for him, especially. The club have just signed his younger brother, who everyone has big raps on, the 16-year-old Enrique. But this was Bernardo's moment. Jed Drew still at it. Macca, Newcastle, we're sounding like broken records, but where to now for them?
Well, I spoke to someone after the game last night, and they labelled Newcastle a term which I thought, as soon as they said it, I went, yes, that's perfect. And they said they are just vanilla. They didn't smash them. They're just like, you just look at it and you go, oh, yeah. There's just nothing really that you can sort of feel that exciting about it. It's just, just dish it up. That's it. Yeah. And when they said it, I was like, you know what? You're right. They're one of the only teams in the league that when the game comes, you think it's going to be just another game. Like this, every team's got something. Brisbane, they're shit. Perth, they're fucking, they've been fucking garbage. Perth, and then all of a sudden they spot up and give you a win. They're just that blah, aren't they? And it's like, fuck, they're not bad. They're not terrible, but they're not good. They're just in the middle.
Are they the new Western United?
Yeah.
As Western United have now become the new Adelaide.
Yeah.
They've become the Western United of seasons past.
Yes, 100%. And look, don't get me wrong, Clayton Taylor is brilliant. He does well. He gets in the pocket. He causes problems all the time. His ball for Gibson, who, again, was a great run. Two of them, the run and the ball, was fucking fantastic. And you look at that moment and go, that's fucking brilliant. That was really good. And Gibson's starting to find his feet at this level. Mm. And then you look at the defensive side of things and you go, oh, my God. They are so They don't know how to defend from crosses. It's like they've been told you've got to mark space or get to a spot when the ball's in a wide area. Don't worry about just watch the ball. And they just do not mark players. Go back to the Australia Cup game against MacArthur at the start of the year when they were in front, and then almost carbon copy, a ball gets put into the box, and Valère Germain tapped the ball in from 4 yards out. There must have been 5 Jets players around him. And it was almost like he was like, fuck, did that just happen? He didn't move, he didn't run, and this is exactly the same. He was there. For one, Virtue gets the ball and makes a run through, and no one tracks his run. So he just goes through. He puts this ball across the 6 yard that goes at fucking snail's pace. But as he was about to cross it, you had Valère Germain standing here, Mark Natta standing here, marking him, and Natta just runs off to the front post, and Valère just almost walks into the space in between and scores a goal. And this is something that I've seen of Mark Natta again and again and again and again. He cannot man mark in the box. I don't know what's the one thing what's the danger in the box? Who scores goals? Players. When the ball's in the box, find a fucking player. I get the concept of 3+1 that you try to get into position to cover all areas. Fucking space, old as time, fucking old men have always said it. Space doesn't score goals. Fucking players do. And someone of Valère Germain, you're going to leave him. Fuck.
Shut up, Macca.
Sorry, just got on my
I agree. I don't want to be too critical on Natta, but even then, if you marked space and instead, which you're right, not picking up men in the box is the issue, but you would sense where the danger is going to be and at least stand in a position where you can nullify that. Even if he decided, I'm not going to mark Jermaine, I'm just going to stand, in that corridor between the goalkeeper and the last line of defense, that's where the ball was always going to go.
Yeah.
He ran away from that area. So I thought even if he did decide I'm going to mark space in this area, if he marked the right space, it would have been fine.
Yeah.
But it was both of those things. I think just not having the awareness or the intuition of that feel in the box of where the ball's going to be and where you need to stand to nullify the situation. And it's not only him. I think the whole defensive is culpable of that. And do you think as well for Newcastle, going a bit deeper, do you think they have a bit of like a leadership vacuum in that team? I don't think there's anyone that, in those situations is taking control of the situation, instructing the team. That they're a very young, relatively inexperienced team. I just feel like they just need one or two experienced players. To make them a more formidable outfit, because we talked about weak underbelly before. They have a very weak underbelly, and they don't have enough going forward to get away with that, basically.
Correct.
Well, who did they lose over the off-season? There was Hoffy went. I mean, he's still there at the club, but he's no longer in the playing. Stamatolopoulos was a good point and leader in the attack, I guess.
But I think
Brandon
even
O'Neill
last
was
season,
still there, but
last season shouldn't be what they're aspiring to be. I think Newcastle's been underwhelming for years now. I think they need to,
Well, it's been difficult. We know for them as well without the ownership.
Yeah.
That the big question now regarding the new owners, and we spoke about it with bringing you guys have both talked about the need for Brisbane to Queenslandify their structure. That was part of what Chad Gibson was doing when he brought in the new jerseys and became the brand, all the throwbacks to the history, the colours, the maroon is there of Queensland, the orange, the blue, all these things that look to the history of the club. We're not seeing it on or off the pitch at the moment with them, but is that not the same at Newcastle? I mean, Newcastle, there's Dobson, the young kid who's come on, but
there's Bracco,
they need to Newcastle. They need to get that. Yeah, Bracco who came on. Yeah,
Ben Van Dawson's been on the bench, and he's a centre back that shows plenty of promise. And you'd start to think, well, so this is the thing. My argument always is.
But what about around the club, Macca, as well? What about your Newcastle people that are still there? Newcastle's fucking Craig Johnson came from Newcastle. It's football royalty.
If I think of Newcastle, I think of, all the Griffiths brothers. There's a whole generation of fantastic players they had there. And I don't know, the ins and outs and who's still around in the football sense, but their identity from back then to now is unrecognisable.
Yeah. And that, to your point, is that the club's where it is. It's now the club has always come in. The new owners always come in and said they're not going to throw millions of dollars at the first team. They're going to build. They want to build an academy and build that structure up and get that all sorted, because the academy at the Jets has been underfunded for. When I say underfunded, I mean fucking well underfunded for a long time. You wouldn't even call it the bare minimum. So they've always said they're going to come in and try and fix that space first, which is fair enough. But you need to give the punters out there something to look at and go, well, give us the hope that we can make the six. Not even just we're just going to be the also rounds 8th to 10th again. They need to be able to see that you're going to at least try to bring one or two players in that can make a difference to the first team squad while those younger players are coming in as well. And you're right. I think it's time that the clubs came in, the owners have come in. They've had their time to settle. It's a new season now. They've had 6 months in. This window, it would be great. It would be fantastic for them to turn around and say, we've gone and got a midfielder who's got experience at this level that will come in and fucking grab people by the scruff of the neck figuratively and say, this is your job, do your fucking job. And he'll grab the ball and do this and start a centre back or another striker or whatever it is that's a senior striker. Is that going to happen? I don't think so. So my question then is, well, just start giving your Dobsons and your Braccos and your Ben Van Dawsons more minutes so that next year they get more exposed. And I've said this, and I hit Rob Stanton up at the end of last season about this on air and off air. We speak off air as well. And he was like, I do want to do that, but I don't see it. We're seeing a couple of, you see Dobson comes on one game, he came on for like 30 seconds. You're like, well, what's the fucking point? Give them 15, 20 minutes. Give Bracco 15, 20 minutes. Can Ben Van Dawson come on and play half an hour at centre back, particularly when we're talking about these issues at the back? Why not throw him in for a game and see how he goes? And, like you see a 17-year-old playing week in, week out at Western United because he just has to. Just play him. Fuck. The only way they're going to get that experience is to give them more minutes. And they're going to fuck up. They're going to make mistakes. But, as you said, Robbie, it then shows the locals that we have got some players there that we can call our own. And it's the age-old thing I've seen in Newcastle where they don't seem to get those minutes as much as they do at other clubs. Other clubs seem to back their young guys a little bit more. And like you said, Robbie does have Rob Stanton's got a young squad anyway. So why not throw in some locals? And do you know what the other thing is then? That if the young ones come in and they aren't good enough, then you can sort of say to the punters, well, look, at least I've given them a go.
Yeah. I think, not a local, but I think the one kind of bright spot for Newcastle in the last few weeks is Lockie Rose since he's come back. He obviously scored against Brisbane, the winner, came off the bench on the weekend, was unlucky with a header, which was an unbelievable attempt.
Yeah.
I think, he's shown at MacArthur he can score goals. I think that if he can find his best form, they could go and probably get better results than they have so far this season. But, looking at the bigger picture, I think you're bang on there. There's some big questions that need answering from the club, I think.
Okay, one last big question then, and as the former MacArthur player, Tommy, you can answer it. We need to wrap this thing up. I've been up since 5 o'clock in the morning. I've been drinking coffee. I need to piss. So, MacArthur. Look, they're there and thereabouts. When it happens, it happens. Mile Stojovski, Matt Smith, Christophe Gamel, they're doing a good job again with a, more or less unheralded squad. There are lots of people calling for, the likes of Jed Drew, Jake Holman, to be recognised a little bit more, to start grabbing more of the headlines. But just a word on MacArthur and what they're doing, because I spoke to the coaching staff at MacArthur when we go out to Campbelltown for games. And at the start of the season, they were always having more than 50% possession, but they were unable to break teams down. All that possession was just Uzkok, Aslanagic, Wiertza across the back, nothing in the opposition half. And I get the feeling that they're working on that they're starting to show a little bit more control in a game, even if they are a transition team, just purely because of the profile of their players. But they look like they're evolving in the right direction for me.
Yeah, and I think if you look at their players in their midfield, you just touched on it, having the likes of Luke Bratton, bringing on the likes of Danny De Silva, they have enough quality to unlock any defence, and I think they are kind of finding the right balance. And I think it's consistency's been the big issue. We saw in round one, they put 6 or 7 goals past Perth. On their day, they are as good as anyone, but I think, like a lot of the other teams, I think defensively is the big question mark for them. I do think they're pretty vulnerable. And I think the only reason we don't talk about MacArthur challenging for silverware is because of them defensively. I think going forward, we've seen the likes of Jed Drew and Yakulis, their output's as good as any other player in the league this season. So I think they have enough quality in the front third. It's just defensively. And I think it's personnel. I think in terms of recruitment, I think they're too top heavy. I think they got too much of their best players in the front third, basically, which I think you could say the same thing for Sydney FC and Melbourne Victory, probably. And, too much investment's gone into those attacking roles. And I think if they're probably one defender off challenging for the minor premiership. But having said that, I think for MacArthur, no team would want to play them if they can find a way to make sure they stay in the top 6, they're not a team you'd want to play because they can beat anyone on their day with the players they've got. So I think that, come finals time, they could be a dark horse to win it if they can get in the 6, but I don't see them being consistent enough to win the leagues per se.
Rumour is one of those attacking players may have played his last game with the club. Ariath Piol wasn't there on the weekend either, and he scored a couple of very nice goals. It's a very, very big rumour in the Tom Waddingham proportions of not playing this weekend.
Probably by the time this goes, we process this and get it out there.
Exactly. What's the date? Oh, no, there's still 3 more days before it can be officially announced. Yeah. All right, that'll do. Let's have a quick look at the ladder. This is where I wrap up things very quickly. Melbourne City are leading. They are top of the table for the first time. They weren't top of the table at all last season, so they're on goal difference ahead of Adelaide, but Adelaide and then Auckland a point behind both have a game in hand. So I'm sick of saying provisionally because everything's provisional when you have bye rounds. No one's played the same amount of matches. Macarthur and Western United are 4th and 5th. They've both played 13 matches, so 2 more than both Adelaide and Auckland, 1 more than Melbourne City. They're on 21 points, so they're within striking distance of top spot. Sydney FC That win sees them climb back above Melbourne Victory and into the 6 on 20 points, 4 off top spot. Melbourne Victory have played 12, 19 points, 1 point outside the 6. Western Sydney, there's this next big gap, if you like, from Victory to the Wanderers, 4 points. Then come the Mariners, who, despite themselves, are still in that mid-table. Same with Wellington Phoenix, a similar type of situation, but they need to start getting some consistent football and results, those two sides, to contest. Probably same can go for Western Sydney Wanderers as well. Newcastle, Perth, who got their second win on 8 points, and Brisbane. Macca, you tweeted that the Central Coast Mariners had got their, first win in round 12 of 18-19?
They've got
I was looking,
their record off their back.
Yeah.
The Mariners are no longer the worst starting team in A-League history. The Brisbane Roar.
Exactly. It is. Well, we can keep going from week to week.
Who were their bitter rivals for a Ange, Arnie period? We fucking hated each other. We always went against each other, and now Brisbane has taken one of the records off the Mariners, and Mariners can rejoice that it's the right one to take.
All right, we're going to put you both on the spot very quickly because by the time people listen to this, these two matches will probably have been played. Tomorrow night, Perth versus Western Sydney. Stadge returning out west. In one sentence or less, if you want, Tommy, who's going to win this and why?
I think I'm going to say be boring, still on the fence, and I'm going to say it's a draw. I think Perth's going to take a lot of confidence. I think Western Sydney's been improving a lot, but Perth's a tough place to go, and they probably got a bit of confidence from the weekend and feel like Glory's turned a corner, so I'm going to go 1-1 draw.
What's the opposite of flying under the radar? Because I get the feeling Western Sydney...
Doing a nudie run.
Well, certainly we've been... I get the feeling that Western Sydney have been a bit the streaker. We've been pumping up their tyres over the last few weeks. And they're still, yes, they have a couple of games in hand. That could change everything. But they're 5 points outside the 6 at the moment. And, they've got a great attack again. But defensively, Macca, they're conceding.
Yeah.
How do you reckon this one's going to go? That's all I wanted to say.
In saying all that, I think Western Sydney will win. I think their attacking stocks are too good. And
okay.
I don't think...
Wellington, Sydney. Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. I was going to say, I don't think Perth are strong enough yet to trouble them at the back. Enough, because I think Western Sydney will score more.
Wellington, Sydney.
Wellington, Sydney. I've picked Sydney in my tips, so I'm going to stick with it.
I can't remember.
Agreed.
Yeah? Sydney too strong for Wellington?
Yeah, I think, might change it up a bit. Busy schedule, bring in some of those young players, and I think they'll shine. So I think Sydney will be too strong.
All right. Well, when Sydney do get it to click, they do look a nice side. We know they have the quality in that team as well. All right. That'll just about do it, I reckon, gentlemen.
Right.
Tommy Oar, thank you. Socceroo's cap number 121 or shirt number
well, don't give it away. Don't give
Daniel
it away.
McBreen, shirt 127.
Who the fuck am I away?
No one listens right to the end.
No, not even us. What were we talking about?
It's fucking hell, an hour and a half today. Jesus.
All
right. Well
Thanks,
done.
Tommy.
Cheers. Thanks.
A-League addict, if you've made it this far. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Macca. Don't forget, just enjoy listening to this and move on to the rest of your A-League action this week, people. Speak to you later. Ciao.